A self-made millionaire with a wonderful family. A very exclusive neighborhood. A lawsuit with millions of dollars at stake.
They immediately learned that Bill McLaughlin had been in this very contentious lawsuit with his former business partner.
A shocking and bloody event that no one sees coming. Leaves authorities baffled and friends and family terrified.
So the suspect had keys to the place, entered, shot him immediately, and exited immediately. So it was an execution.
Newport Beach is in Orange County, California, and is one of the wealthiest cities in the nation.
Newport Beach is a coastal city. It has a lot of really nice homes overlooking the beach.
Newport Beach is very affluent, but it's this really weird, kind of cool, eclectic mixture of wealthy people and broke surfers.
It's high end. A lot of prominent people live there. A lot of people with money live there. And Bill McLaughlin, he was one of those people. He was a multimillionaire and was living right on the bay in the Newport area.
He is the kind of life that most people dream of, but even the most beautiful dream can turn into a nightmare.
On December 15th, 1994, at 9:11 p.m., a call is placed to 911.
Newport Beach emergency, please fire paramedics. What's the problem there? What do you need the police for, sir? I can't understand what you're saying.
The call is coming from Bill McLaughlin's home, and the caller is his son, Kevin.
There's this heart-wrenching 911 call where he's trying to describe to the 911 operator that his father has been shot.
He had some physical difficulties from an accident that he was involved in. He didn't speak well.
Your dad? Okay, we have an officer on the way to your house right now.
Kevin McLaughlin was skateboarding home one night and he got hit by a drunk driver. The accident resulted in substantial brain damage to Kevin. So he goes from being this super athletic surfer kid to having a major disability because of this accident.
Is there anybody out there that can talk to me? You're the only one that can talk to me? Okay, is your father or your dog? Your father? Okay, we should have an officer there any minute now.
Emergency personnel arrive and find Bill McLaughlin lying in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor. He is dead.
Police walked in and immediately went to work. So Bill McLaughlin is on his back in the kitchen. He's got 6 gunshot wounds.
He's been shot multiple times in his own home in one of the safest neighborhoods in the country. Who would have done that? And more importantly, why?
54-year-old William Bill McLaughlin is born in Southern California in 1939.
He studies biological engineering in college. After he graduates, he gets a job selling medical supply equipment.
In 1975, Bill invents a new kind of dialysis catheter.
Bill McLaughlin was essentially an executive that got together with a partner of his in the pharmaceutical business, and they invented a way to separate plasma from blood. And this man and Bill essentially partnered up and sold this technology to a major pharmaceutical company.
It's a groundbreaking invention and one that's still in use today. When he sells it, it makes him a multimillionaire.
Bill, his wife, and his 3 kids move into a house in Newport Beach.
It's in a gated community called Balboa Coves. You know you're doing well when you can afford a house there.
Until his wife files for divorce in 1990.
Bill McLaughlin had been married for over 30 years. He had 2 daughters and a son. And, you know, it's one of those things where the marriage just kind of sputtered out. There was no great drama.
It's never easy going through a divorce, especially when you have kids involved. But all that said, Bill seems to come through it okay. He maintains a good relationship with his kids, And he certainly keeps busy. He regularly flies his private plane to Las Vegas, where he has a vacation home.
On Thursday, December 15th, 1994, Bill flies home from Las Vegas, as he's done many times before.
Bill McLaughlin was home with his son. His son was not supposed to be home. He was supposed to be in a meeting, but he was not. He did not go to the meeting. So he was there, and they probably had something to eat. The son went upstairs to listen to some music, and Bill was downstairs at his table in the kitchen, or near the kitchen.
Bill is going over some legal documents.
Documents related to a lawsuit that he'd been involved in with his former business partner.
And that's when all of a sudden somebody came through the front door, which originally was locked, and came through and shot him 6 times while he was in his kitchen.
Kevin was upstairs listening to music, and he heard a series of gunshots downstairs. And he came downstairs, and he saw his father dying on the kitchen floor.
And he immediately dialed 911 and tried his best to communicate with his voice problems that he had to the 911 operator of the police department and tell them his dad was shot.
Your son? Where is the gun? Where is the gun right now? You don't know? But you think he shot himself?
Mr. McLaughlin was in the kitchen on his back. He had bullet holes in him, 6 of them. There were bullet casings from a semi-automatic handgun would eject the casing, and they were 6 of those around on the floor, and he was dead.
The rounds were determined to be a type of ammunition called Federal Hydroshock, which is it's a vicious round. Essentially, it expands inside the human body.
The only other person in the house at the time of the murder is Kevin.
It's clear he's not a serious suspect, but police still have to clear him, and they do, pretty quickly.
When the police got there and looked at this scene, it really did look like it was a planned murder, because the person came in, the person had keys to get in the front door, had 2 keys, one for the bolt lock and one for the regular lock, and one was still in the keyhole and the other one was down on the floor.
The one that was stuck in the front door was a freshly cut Ace Hardware key, and the one on the mat was an original community access gate key.
So the suspect had keys to the place, entered, shot him immediately, and exited immediately. So it was an execution.
No forced entry, no sign of a struggle, and nothing was taken from the home. This rules out a robbery gone wrong. But who would want Bill McLaughlin dead?
Investigators discover that Bill's former business partner believes that Bill owes him millions of dollars, and the two have been battling in court.
It appears that Bill is going over documents about this lawsuit when he's attacked in his kitchen.
That's a motive. Whether or not that person had anything to do with the murder is something that detectives needed to find out right away.
That was of interest to them. They certainly took a look at the partner.
Bill had just essentially won the lawsuit. The court came out with an indicated ruling that was going to free up about $12 million to Bill McLaughlin.
The ex-partner has a solid alibi, so is ruled out fairly quickly.
Bill was divorced at the time of this incident.
An ex-wife might be a logical suspect if the divorce is still in progress, but Bill and Susan have been divorced for years. Divorce can bring out the worst in people, especially when custody of children is an issue, but their youngest child is 26. It doesn't seem like his ex-wife would have much to gain.
Investigators are still working at the scene when a woman named Nanette Johnston shows up.
There was a point in the investigation, about probably an hour and a half into it maybe, when Nanette arrived home. She lived at that house, and she had been shopping in one of the nearby malls and arrived home to see all the police tape and all the police cars, and they interviewed her outside the house.
They don't know who she is. She has to explain to the police that she's Bill's fiancée and that she lives in the house with them. She's already figured out that there's something wrong, but she's shocked to discover that Bill is dead.
Do you have any idea why this could happen?
I have no idea. I wish I had something to tell you. I wish I knew. I don't know. I can't think of anybody.
They interviewed Nanette quite in detail. She had been up at a soccer game with her son and her daughter, went to the store before coming home.
What were your activities today?
I picked up some stuff for my son at a soccer game in Diamond Bar. And so I went up there.
She planned to be with Bill that night. She knew that he was home that night and hadn't seen him for a few days because he had taken a trip to Las Vegas and had recently flown back and arrived that afternoon while she was at the soccer game.
They find a note from Nanette telling Bill that she's at the game and will be home later.
So she was very worried, especially when she found out that there were keys that were left at the scene that somebody knew, and it got the keys to get into the house in order to kill Bill. And she made mention that she was supposed to be home at that time. That scared her, and she said that she was afraid that maybe she was the target and she just wasn't home. So she was very concerned.
Since the investigation will be continuing all night, Nanette can't stay at the house. Luckily, Bill owns another house nearby on the beach. She tells the police that she'll stay there.
As a matter of routine, investigators try to verify Nanette's story. They talk to her ex-husband, who confirms that she is at a soccer game with her son. But then he drops a bombshell.
He told the police, she told me not to mention this, but she was there with her boyfriend. And that kind of surprised the police because they thought that she didn't have a boyfriend. They thought that she was a fiancé to the victim.
Newport Beach, California, is home to many wealthy and prominent citizens. Balboa Coves is a gated community located just off the Coast Highway and right on the waterfront. It's where Bill McLaughlin lives until his life is unexpectedly and brutally cut short on December 15th, 1994. It's also where Bill's fiancée, Nanette Johnston, lives.
Police find out that Nanette has a secret boyfriend. While she was engaged to marry Bill, they want to find out more about this guy.
So they decided to stake out Nanette's second house, the one that's on the beach, to see if this other guy, Eric, would arrive. Eric actually arrived the day that they were watching. It was sometime at night. He did arrive at that location, and they ended up actually doing a car stop on him and talking to him, and they found out who he was.
The police asked him, what's your relationship with Nanette? And he said, well, we're friends. We're pretty good friends.
They discovered that he did have a small warrant for his arrest, a traffic warrant of some sort. And so they actually took him into custody for that warrant and then interviewed him in extent regarding this case.
Eric Napuski is an ex-football player. He played in the NFL for a few different teams and also played in Spain and in Canada, but his entire career only lasted for a few years.
Okay, and what kind of work are you doing now? I'm still in security. Just security work. I'm just helping out the nightclub because they have a problem with controlling things down there. The last one was shut down.
He's working as a bouncer at a bar, and this particular bar is only a block away from Bill's house.
They ask him if he ever uses guns.
Okay, do you have a CCW? No. Okay, do you do any army? No, I don't do any army. Not even in uniform? No, even in uniform. I don't even have a sidearm. That takes at least 6 months.
They asked him if he owned guns. He originally said no, he didn't.
And then the interview goes on for probably another 45 minutes, and they circle back.
Okay, you said you don't own any firearms at all? No, I bought one. I haven't seen it for so long. I bought one in Dallas that I gave my dad as a .380.
So first it's no guns, and then it's one.
Eventually, though, they came to a point where he did admit that he had a Beretta 92F 9mm gun, but he had given it some time ago to one of his employees at a scene, and that guy had lost it. So that was like months ago.
He keeps changing his story. 1 minute he's no guns at all, and now he's, well, I did have a .380, but I gave it to my dad, and I gave a Beretta 9mm to my employee. Now I don't have either of them.
When the police officers actually contacted the employee that supposedly had the Beretta, He said, no, I was never given a Beretta.
It was a piece of crap Jennings 380, and Eric never paid me for the job, so I told Eric that the gun got stolen out of my car.
And he eventually was able to get that 380 semi-automatic gun and give it to the police, so it was not the Beretta.
He says his dad has the 380, but his employee has it? Or are there two 380s? Where's the Beretta he says he owns, and why does he claim it's missing?
When this was going down, they were doing the ballistic testing on the bullets at the crime scene, and they discovered that the bullets that were there had been fired by one of 27 guns. One of those 27 guns was a Beretta 92F. So when they heard about this Beretta being possibly belonging to Eric, they definitely were interested in finding out where that gun was. Since Eric told them he gave it to this employee, and that wasn't true, they then questioned Eric a lot about where that gun was.
During his second interview with police, Eric is more defensive.
Where is your 9mm?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
That's my statement. I don't want to talk about that anymore.
The last time you saw it?
I don't want to talk about it anymore. No. This is the thing. No matter what happened to any guns, anytime, anywhere, I didn't do anything wrong with anything. Okay? That's my statement.
One of the things that's interesting about Naposki is he's incredibly forceful as he tells his story and convincing.
Nanette's a pretty good friend of mine.
Would you describe as a dating relationship, a boyfriend, girlfriend?
I would say a dating relationship.
And it starts out, she's a girl I know, to basically the end of the interview, they learn that they're dating.
Then he admits to maybe a little more.
Girlfriend can mean a lot of things. I mean, do you think this is headed towards a serious relationship, marriage?
I hope it is. I hope it is, yeah.
By the end of the first interview, he admits that he hoped to marry her.
While looking into Bill's financial affairs, investigators discover some missing money.
They got into the finances, and they started to discover that there was money missing from some of his accounts, and they discovered that Nanette was taking small bits of money about a year earlier. Throughout the whole year of 1994, as it came closer and closer to December, more and more money was being taken out of Bill's accounts and disappearing. As a matter of fact, the day before he was murdered, Nanette got a check from him for $250,000 with a signature that was determined not to be Bill's, even though it looked similar to it.
It comes out in the investigation that Nanette and Eric frequently traveled together.
In the weeks leading up to Bill McLaughlin's murder, Nanette's sister got married on the East Coast, and she did not bring Bill McLaughlin as her date. She brought Eric Naposki as her date.
This doesn't seem to mesh with her plans to marry Bill.
Does one of them decide that they need to get Bill out of the way?
Well, they had suspicions, absolutely. And they brought those suspicions, but they just did not have enough to get over the hump to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. They needed more than what they had at that time.
But they do have enough to charge Nanette with grand theft for stealing close to $500,000 from Bill. She pleads guilty and goes to jail for less than a year. And Bill McLaughlin's murder case goes stone cold. Bill McLaughlin is murdered in his own kitchen. Police suspect his fiancée, Nanette, and her boyfriend, Eric, but can't prove it. Nanette is convicted of stealing some of Bill's money and spends a year in prison. The murder case goes cold.
My name's Larry Montgomery. I've been a police detective at the Irvine Police Department for most of my 29 years that I was at Irvine PD. And then I retired and went to the Orange County District Attorney's Office and was an investigator for them for about 14 years. And during that time, I was allowed to go into a cold case unit.
It's 2008, 14 years since Bill McLaughlin's murder, and Larry Montgomery is assigned to the case.
It was a brand new unit for me to be in, and I was kind of like, well, what do I do with a cold case? What do I do to make difference that the other detectives hadn't done maybe? One of my advantages was I had time. I didn't have a caseload. I could take this case and do whatever I wanted and take as long as I wanted.
When a case has gone unsolved for 14 years, another year or two can make all the difference. Better to take it slow and get it right.
So what I did is I had, that particular case, I think there was 63 tape-recorded interviews on cassette tapes. That's a lot of interviews. It was hours and hours and hours, and hundreds of hours, basically. So I sat down and I started going through the tapes and taking copious notes on everything on all those tapes.
Working a cold case is a lot like being an investigative journalist. You look for things that don't make sense, that don't add up, that raise a few questions, and then you dig deeper. Nanette's behavior on the night of the murder is one of those things.
So you look at what she said when she's at home. When she comes home that day, she's mortified that her fiance has been murdered. She knows that the killer brought keys, had keys to this house. How did the killer get keys to this house? And then at the end she goes, I'm not going to stay here. Don't worry. I'm not, I know you have a day's worth of work to do here, but I'll go to our other place.
The locks had not been changed on the beach house. She knows there's a killer on the loose with a key to one of the houses. Why wouldn't the killer have keys to both houses?
Why would you even risk going there? Why would you even consider going there?
She's brought her children to a place where a killer might show up, and she didn't even draw the curtains.
And here's Nanette with a Christmas tree and her two little kids putting stuff on the Christmas tree. Okay, how scared is Nanette of the killer? She's in a place blocks from where the murder was. Who knows how the murderer got keys to that house? Does he have keys to this house? Was she the target? She said, I could have been the target. I've pissed off people in my life. So is she really afraid that she's the target? She's right there in the full view of anybody on the beach. Matter of fact, there's a man with a gun right outside. It's a police officer, and she doesn't know that he's even out there.
They're police officers, they're detectives. They know how to operate a firearm, standing on the sand outside the beach house, and she didn't even draw the curtains and didn't know they were there, which means her head is not on a swivel. She's not looking around for who this might be.
Did she change the locks? She didn't do that. She didn't have security. She didn't have even Naposki move in with her to protect her from the killer. She goes to this place and doesn't have a care in the world. She's not looking out the window that the guy's going to get her. So that shows that she's not afraid of the killer. Otherwise, she wouldn't be there.
Investigators get the sense that Nanette first became interested in Bill because of his money.
What we discovered while investigating the case, Nanette had put an ad in back then it was a picture, like magazine, newspaper type material, and it had her in a negligee, kind of kneeling down on a bed.
So it's a boudoir photo of her in negligee saying, I know how to take care of my man if he knows how to take care of me. And it's entitled Wealthy Men Only.
And it appears that was the ad that attracted Bill's attention.
Nanette also stands to inherit money because of Bill's death. In addition to the money she's convicted of stealing, there's a bequest in the will and a life insurance policy.
Regardless of guilt or innocence, Eric and Nanette do not get married and live happily ever after.
His talk of love seems authentic, and his intentions to marry her are clear. He even writes a note in his book on January 1st, 1994 with the word propose, spelt wrong, but we know what he means.
And she actually went and found another millionaire and married that guy. Kind of dumped Eric, even though they were together for a while, but I don't think she really wanted Eric around. And so they did separate, and they went their separate ways.
They embarked on this very lavish lifestyle. Now, the thing about Nanette is she's all about money, right? So Eric Naposki had fulfilled his usefulness. They broke up because she has no real interest in some broke, washed-up football player. Eric, after the murder at some point, I think he went up to the Canadian Football League for a little while. He wound up in Spain playing for the Barcelona Dragons, had a great season, but it's kind of like being the home run king of the minor league team. He didn't make any real money.
He meets a woman there, and they have a couple of kids. Back in the U.S., he does some coaching at the University of New Haven, goes back into security work, and then opens his own gym. Nanette not only finds herself another wealthy businessman to marry, she does it twice.
She winds up getting married to a guy named Packard, who my understanding is made a bunch of money in real estate. and then they got divorced, and then wound up remarrying to a guy named Billy McNeil. So she went off and lived this very lavish, sort of quintessential Newport Beach housewife, Orange County. I mean, we've all seen the show, right?
And she has another kid with each of them.
It's now 15 years after the murder of Bill McLaughlin, and Larry gets his first big break when he stumbles onto something interesting at the end of one of the 63 tapes made all those years ago.
Larry Montgomery, he's incredible. He went through all the old tip logs of people who called in, and he listened to the end of every tape.
And it was a woman who was saying, yeah, you know, we were watching the news and we saw that Nanette Johnston ripped off this guy and was sent to jail. We just wanted you guys to know that my husband had dealings with Nanette. She came over to our house one day and was interested in maybe investing in my husband's company, and was willing to invest maybe $200,000 or maybe $100,000 in the company, but she wouldn't have the money till after the first of the year.
Where does Nanette think that money is coming from? She's got no job. She's got no stocks. She has no sort of financial portfolio. The only way Nanette winds up flush with cash after the first of the year is if Bill McLaughlin dies.
The woman wants to remain anonymous, and the call is abruptly cut off. No one tries to follow up at the time.
I heard, with really good earphones, I could hear her in the background say, Robert, they want to talk to you.
It's not much to go on, but if Larry can find this Robert, it just might be the key to finding out what really happened to Bill McLaughlin 15 years ago. In 2008, cold case investigator Larry Montgomery begins looking into the 1994 murder of Bill McLaughlin. He discovers that an anonymous woman phones police with a tip about Nanette having suspicious dealings with her husband, a man named Robert.
So all of a sudden it's like, this is interesting. Okay, I would love to know who this guy is, but all we had was the type of company he had, which was Biomedics, I think, and he lived in Irvine, and his name was Robert. That's really all we had. Oh, he went to the gym with her. We know what gym she went to. So we went to the gym to see if we could find anybody with the name Robert in there. We found some Roberts, but we didn't find any that matched him.
A thorough search in Irvine fails to yield any Roberts with a business license for a biomedical company.
There are these books that they have that are called crisscross directories.
In a crisscross directory, phone numbers are listed by numerical order rather than by name.
You could look up a number and then find who belonged to that number, instead of looking up a name and finding the phone number. So it was a reverse book. So I went there to look and see what numbers Nanette was calling and who she was calling, and there were two numbers that I could not find in those books. I almost left, and then I started realizing, well, this was December, so maybe I should be looking at 95, because maybe it's a new phone number in 94 somewhere. So I went back inside, went back and got 95 book, looked for those two numbers, and lo and behold, one of those numbers popped up, and it belonged to Robert. We located that person. We found out that he was in fact the right person. This is years and years later, and at that point he was willing to talk with us, and he laid it all out to us. So he's now a new witness, and so that was one of our needed pieces of evidence so that we could file charges.
Larry locates another witness from the past.
During the initial investigation, a woman calls police and offers some information about Eric, but because she insists on remaining anonymous, they disregard what she has to say.
So that was a person that I re-looked for years later, and I was able to find her and go talk with her, and she was able to open up to me and then agreeable to talk with us about everything that she knew back then in great detail.
In 1994, Eric lives in an apartment complex, and he has a friend there named Susan. They used to talk to each other while they were lying next to the pool.
But he was talking to her about his girlfriend, who he wanted to marry, and how his girlfriend was having a problem. She lived with a rich man that was abusing her, sexually assaulting her. And he was very angry about this fact that his girlfriend was being sexually assaulted by this rich guy from Newport.
Interestingly enough, he tells Susan that he wants to blow up the rich guy's plane, But she doesn't think much of it. She thinks it's just an angry guy talking. That is until January, when she bumps into Eric and he tells her that the guy is dead.
And she goes, "Oh my God, Eric, please tell me you didn't do that." And he kind of chuckled and said, "Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, maybe I paid somebody to do it."
She checks the newspapers, and the story about Bill's murder is everywhere.
And she did call the police anonymously at first and just said, I wanted to tell you this information, but she was afraid that she would get killed by Naposki. So she gave them some information, but it wasn't enough for them to go do anything with, because she wasn't identifying herself totally.
You can't blame her for being afraid.
So that was another witness that we had that we were now able to get more information from, new information that helped us put the case together.
So we've got these just gems of evidence that we were able to develop in the 2 years that we worked the case up that really, I think, made it overwhelming.
Ballistics takes another look at the bullets that killed Bill.
In this case, back in 1994, the lab said that the bullets that killed Bill McLaughlin were shot by one of 27 guns. Ballistics had changed over the years, and they were able to determine that it's actually one of 2 guns could have shot these bullets, not one of 27. And lo and behold, one of those guns was a Beretta 92F.
So given the interviews, that was hugely significant because we know Eric Naposki not only had a Beretta 92F, but he lied to the police multiple times about what happened to it. So that was big.
March of 2009 is when we finally got enough put together that we could arrest them. And so what we chose to do was we thought that Nanette is the brains of this outfit. She had orchestrated it. She got Eric to kill for her. That's what we believed happened. And Eric was kind of duped into it. He thought he was going to marry Nanette, and Nanette did not marry him. Once he did his job and killed, she basically tried to get rid of him. And so we were monitoring her, and what we wanted to do was get Eric into custody.
We wanted to give Eric Naposki a chance to sign on with the good guys. We actually set up 2 teams, and the plan was one team would go and arrest Naposki in Connecticut, take him to a police department, and put in what's called a cold call to Nanette Johnson and see if he'd be willing to help the police nail her down and get her to make some sort of admission.
He was not interested in that at all. He said he didn't do it, she didn't do it, this is all bull, and so he would not participate in that whatsoever. So we were disappointed in that because we thought that would be a good way to get Nanette.
If Eric won't come clean and testify against Nanette, do investigators have enough to convict either of them? Cold case investigators amass enough new evidence to arrest Eric Naposki for the murder of Bill McLaughlin. They're hoping to turn Eric on his suspected accomplice, Nanette, and get his help to incriminate her. He refuses.
Even though they mostly have circumstantial evidence, they go ahead and arrest Nanette anyway. They're still hoping that Eric will come to his senses and testify against her.
On June 19, 2011, Eric goes on trial for the murder of Bill McLaughlin.
By putting him on trial first, they're hoping to wear him down and show him how much trouble he's in. They want him to cut a deal. The prosecution reveals that Bill was shot 6 times in a special pattern.
And it was a bang, 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 bang. So it was 6 shots, but in successions of 2.
That's a close combat shooting technique that people are trained to do. It's essentially you shoot twice, you re-aim, you shoot twice, you re-aim, you shoot twice. Turns out Eric Naposki had formal firearms training where the instructor went through that technique within 6 months of the murder.
The killer has keys to the front door and gate of Bill's house.
The owner of a hardware store testifies that a month or 2 before the murder, he made some keys for Eric. He thinks that he could have possibly made the key that was found in the front door.
Not only did he get 2 keys cut in my store, but he also asked if I could make a silencer for a 9mm pistol. And we call that a clue.
Eric claims that on his way to work on the night of the murder, he gets a page from one of his managers at the nightclub.
I believe I was in my truck at the time. I went to a phone and I called him. I was in my truck.
A payphone?
Went to a payphone and made the call. I know. How about we go look at my phone bill and see what time exactly I made that call? Maybe then, if I made the call at a certain time, you guys could leave me alone.
Defense claims Eric uses a calling card at precisely 8:52 p.m., making it impossible for him to get to the house and shoot Bill by the time of death at 9:11 p.m.
The only problem is that in the 15 years since the murder, Eric has lost proof of this phone call. The company is out of business and there are no records. The prosecution is able to prove that Eric was able to get from where he claims he made the phone call to the site of the murder in time for him to do it.
One of the things that we did is we drove that over and over and over again. We drove it on the calendar anniversary of it. We drove it on, we did every incarnation of that drive, assuming that Eric Naposki was correct. No matter how you slice or dice that drive, there's plenty of time for Eric Naposki to have committed that murder.
A person could walk from the bar where Eric worked to Bill's house in exactly 2 minutes and 32 seconds.
It's 136 yards. You can hit it with an 8-iron in the game of golf. I mean, it's right across the channel. So Eric Naposki has himself driving directly to the murder scene before the murder.
Whether he stops to make a call or not is irrelevant.
According to the prosecution's version of events, Eric arrives at the house and uses the keys he cut to unlock the gate and the front door. He uses the gun he bought and lied about to shoot Bill in 3 two-shot bursts, thanks to his security guard training. Then he walks to work in 2 minutes and 32 seconds.
Eric chooses not to testify in his own defense.
On July 14, 2011, Eric Naposki is found guilty of murder.
Eric isn't sentenced right away because prosecutors are still hoping that he'll testify against Nanette.
In January 2012, Nanette's trial begins.
The prosecution paints a picture of a younger woman who gets involved with an older, rich man and then conspires with her boyfriend to murder him for financial gain. Bill has made Nanette the beneficiary of a $1 million life insurance policy. He also appointed her as the trustee over the bulk of his estate. He made a will leaving her $150,000, a car, and the use of a beach house, which she was able to stay in for up to a year after his death.
Defense points out that Bill is worth over $20 million and therefore more valuable to Nanette alive than dead.
Bill's accountant testifies about Nanette stealing from Bill. As she steals more and more money and the amounts get larger, she runs a greater risk of being caught.
The problem is that Nanette was about to be on the street with nothing because Bill McLaughlin was going to find out about Eric Naposki or Bill McLaughlin was going to find out about the thefts.
Nanette's ex-husband takes the stand.
He characterizes Nanette as a habitual liar. He says that she claims that she graduated from Arizona State, but he doesn't think she even graduated from high school. She cheats on him throughout the marriage, even leaving a note on a rich guy's car hoping to date him. She brings one date to her son's soccer match, but then meets Eric at the game and goes home with him.
On the night of the murder, Nanette and Eric leave the soccer game early because, quote, Eric has an appointment.
An appointment? Isn't he on his way to work? She asks her ex to take care of the kids and cancels her weekend's visit with them, almost like she knows something is going to happen. She drops Eric off and then goes shopping. Why? She needs an alibi. Because she knows Eric's appointment is to go over to Bill's house, use the keys he had made to let himself in, and then shoot Bill with the Beretta he purchased.
Nanette and Naposki and Nanette's 2 children took a trip back to Naposki's house, his parents' house, and actually stayed with them for almost a week. All 4 of them went to New York and saw the sights of New York, and then they went up to the north part of the United States and went to Nanette's sister's wedding. And they have pictures of the kids and Nanette and Naposki actually at this wedding. Bill was close to those kids. Those kids came over every other week and at his house, and he was close to them. He took them on his boat. He took them in his plane. They have pictures of him on the couch with the kids under both arms. And yet those kids just spent 2 weeks with Eric Naposki and her mom as if that's her boyfriend. That meant that those two kids could never come to Bill's house and see Bill alive again. Because if they did, they would say, oh, we had a great trip. We went with mommy's boyfriend and we went to these places in New York. And they couldn't have that happen. So those kids never could see Bill again.
They either expect him to be dead soon or they know they need to make it happen. Otherwise, Bill will dump her and she'll lose all that money.
And so those are the kind of things that once you get those things and you present those in front of a jury, it's very powerful stuff. And what we did in the trials, at the end of the trials, we presented maybe 7 or 8 things that we found that were really powerful. We have like 60 of those things that we found, and we give 7 of them to the jury and then tell the jury to go back into the jury room and listen to those interviews again. Listen to them again, especially the suspect interviews, and I'll bet you'll find more.
There's a power to discovering things for yourself. It can be far more effective than being told.
On January 23, 2012, after 4 hours of deliberation, the jury finds Nanette guilty of first-degree murder. She is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
This was one of the first cold cases that I worked in the unit, and it was very fulfilling to realize that we could find evidence that we didn't find before because we didn't know to look. And I was very happy with the results of this one. Bill's daughters were there. It was a very emotional experience for them. They really thought that there would never be justice in their father's case. And so it was very powerful for them. Their son, the one that had some physical problems, he had passed away. All they had left were the 2 daughters, and they were very happy that eventually some justice was served.
We're talking almost 2 decades after their father has been murdered for the most banal of all reasons, for money. So when the jury came back, and turns out they were a good group, they got it, they followed the law, they followed the evidence, and they made the right decision. It's one of those things that makes you want to, keep being a prosecutor forever.